Hello everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to the channel. Last video I just posted, I shared with you the Deco Foil Duo transfer gel. And so I thought I'd come back today and talk to you about how maybe we can minimize some of the waste in our cards. So I started making this card right here in that video if you want to check that out. Also some reviews of some really cool products and some hits and some misses if you want to see that video. But for today, I want to talk about how to maybe use up the most we can in our supplies. So I have the Deco transfer gel already dried on this, and it dries a bit tacky. So the reason that it does, and one of the things you can do with it, is you can take a piece of this transfer foil or the ThermoWeb foil, and you can, with no heat, run it through your die cutting machine and have it transfer beautifully onto your card panel. So I'm cutting up my piece of foil here, and then I'm going to make the sandwich that I would with if you were going to run a die through your machine. Now you want to test out your machine and maybe check some pressure. If you're not getting a good transfer, make sure that it's dried, but make sure that you have enough pressure with your machine. So that's sort of a trial and error. Maybe add another shim and see if that helps. So I'm just going to run this through my die cutting machine, which is the Spellbinders Platinum 6. Now, I showed this part in the last video. We'll get into some new footage here in just a minute, but this is the reveal of it. And as it was coming off, the stencil, first of all, is one of my favorite stencils. I use it for so many things. I love the random pattern of it. I just think it's great. But I saw all that extra stuff left over on the left-hand side with that foil. So we're going to see if we can do something with that as well. But look at the results of this. Oh, it's just so beautiful. I tried to, way back when I first got this transfer gel, I tried to use just like my bone folder to transfer the foil on. It did not work. Run it through the die cutting machine. It was perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of cardstock here, and I'm going to cover it in some double-sided adhesive. So you probably, to get the best results, if it's a full sheet of adhesive like this one as opposed to strips. But then I'm going to lay down my foil, and now what's going to be left behind is, of course, all of that foil because of the stickiness of the double-sided tape. And you're probably wondering, well, all of those stars are now sticky. You would be right. All the stars are sticky. So we're going to figure out what to do with those. Now, it did not come off perfectly. There were some pieces of it that don't look as smooth. I think that was because I laid it down not as well as I could have. So pay attention to the way you lay it down. But I didn't care because it almost gave like a mixed media feel. Now here you can see me pouring on embossing powder. So that was silver embossing powder to take care of the stickiness. I'm going to pull in my little glitter picker-upper here. This is mine. I have a little, what is that, ladybug. So cute and really helpful. Unnecessary, you can use a rag. However, I'm going to heat set this with my heat tool. So I didn't want, it worked really well. It heat set it perfectly. Now I have these really sparkly glitter silver stars on there. So super fun. I'm going to decide, though, to make a shaker card with this. And by doing this, by getting a shaker card, we're going to get 2 cards from one. Now, I'm going to use that rainbow background, like you can see here, through the star. And that's going to be how I have the background there. You can use plain white. It doesn't matter. But I'm trying, the whole point of this particular video is I'm trying to use up as much as I possibly can of my leftovers. So I'm going to use some double-sided adhesive. Then I'm going to place down a piece of acetate. We're making just a simple standard card here for shaker. And I'm just going to place that acetate down over the back of the star. Then I'm going to do the same thing. Now, in hindsight, I would probably have traced this on this foam sheet. This is a full A2 size foam sheet. I probably would have traced that through the star before I put the acetate down. So that's a tip for if you try this at home. I'm going to run my star through this really thick piece of foam sheet. And I am going to then use that to make my shaker. I don't have to do a whole bunch of different foam tape. This is just a different way to do it. It's not the only way. But if you do foam tape, you have to make sure that all your pieces touch each other so none of the shaker bits are going to fly out. I remove the backing off of that, and then I'm just going to fill it with my shaker bits of choice. So I put a whole bunch of stars in there. I put some iridescent ones, some gold, I think I chose some really tiny iridescent circles. So just filling it up and having a good time. I'm a classic underfiller or overfiller. It's really hard to get it right. So who cares? Just have fun with it. Once I do that, I lay the backing on. I didn't really need to mind it too much. As long as the card was straight, I knew the rainbows would be straight. So we're good there. And then I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to my card panel to place on my card base. Now with a thick, heavy panel like that, you want to make sure your base is sturdy enough. You may want to consider your postage as well. This is coming out to be a pretty thick card, but just be cognizant of that. I chose the Celebrate Shadow die. I use this on repeat. You're probably getting tired of seeing it, but it's one of those staple things that I have it in thanks, celebrate, and a couple other word choices here, so I just have them around. It makes it simple for my sentiments. Now, let's move on to the second card. Now, I'm going to use these leftovers, okay? First, I'm going to place down a single or a double-sided piece of adhesive, first in the 1/8 inch size. Then I'm going to put the foil on top of it, and it is going to stick to it. So I noticed a little bit of some resistance there, and that was that little mark. We're going to cover that up with embellishment. No big deal. None of this is perfect anyway. I'm just laying down foil on top of double-sided adhesive, which is another way you can use your foil without heat. So I wanted to make sure I shared that as well. I do this 3 more times, alternating with the size of the double-sided adhesive, and now I have a super cute, fun background. I'm going to take that star that we had left over and the leftover foam, and I'm going to pop that up on the middle of this card panel. Once I do that, I have to decide on my sentiment, which I chose a Shadow High die from my stash, and I used the black and white look. Okay, but and I'm going to show you this real quick because stay to the end if you want to see my saga with the glue press. That's at the end. But at this point, I pulled out my Barely Art glue, and as I pulled off try and get the needle out that I keep in it, the ball came off. So then I got my pliers and I was like, well, let me remove the needle, which it removed the entire top of my Barely Art glue. Now, I want to pause the video here for a second. I am in no way saying that this Barely Art glue bottle gave me a hard time. I have had this thing since Barely Art glue came out with Barely Art glue. It is so old, so I'm not surprised. However, I do want to share with you what happened when I tried to figure out my glue bottle situation, and that will be at the end. I didn't want to take up time from this card, but we are coming up upon it shortly. Now, for this card, I finished off with some diamond embellishments. These are actually nail art pieces of embellishment that I got from Amazon, super cheap, and I have so many of them. Highly recommend. And that's how I finished off the card with minimal waste left over. Very, very fun. I hope you give it a try. It was a really good time, just kind of thinking outside the box and trying to use up my stuff. Okay, so moving into the glue bottle drama. I have the glue press from my Sweet Petunia, and it comes with a spare empty bottle. So I thought, well, let me just transfer my Barely Art glue into this spare empty bottle here, and let me just pour it all over the top without any mind whatsoever to it. So let's see it again in slow-mo, because what was I doing? So I just threw it in there. Okay. Take 2. I'm going to go a little bit slower, and I'm actually realizing I had so much glue left over. It fills up the entire bottle. So I put the spare bottle cap back on, only to realize, now I'm transferring it out from my glue press, only to realize they are 2 different nozzles. The one that comes with the Nouveau glue and the one that's the spare bottle. The spare bottle has a wider nozzle. So I figured this out right here as the glue is pouring out of the nozzle. Now the Barely Art is a little bit thinner than the Nouveau. So I was like, why is this leaking all over the place? And then I realized, and maybe you didn't realize this, they are 2 different nozzles. So again, the one that came, I guess well, they are interchangeable. So maybe your Nouveau one did not come with the skinny fine tipped. I don't know, but you should have one of each. I even looked on the website and the glue press says you get one of each. So be aware of that, folks, because it was just globbing all out. Now I am noticing much more control having switched out and going back to the fine precision tip. But I'm still noticing that it is leaking a little bit. So I'm probably going to continue to close it up with the cap as soon as I'm done with crafting. Otherwise, I was leaving it on its holster just for whenever, but I'm going to be using the cap. Anyway, wanted to share that with you all in case you ran into the same issue. Hope it helps. All right, that'll do it for me in this video. I hope you got inspired to try to use up your waste and to just have fun in your craft space. I will see you all in the comments down below and in the next video. Bye-bye.